Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, Trump links autism to Tylenol, plus Jimmy Kimmel returns, and TikTok has reached a deal to keep operating in the U.S. under American ownership. President Donald Trump and his top healthcare aides yesterday urged pregnant women not to take Tylenol unless absolutely necessary.
Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. If you just can't, it's fight like hell not to take it. There may be a point where you have to, and that you have to work out with yourself. So don't take Tylenol.
He said the painkiller increases the risk of autism, but the research is unclear and doctors are pushing back. I spoke with USA Today government accountability reporter Erin Mansfield for more. Erin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So starting here, what did this announcement center on as it pertains to Tylenol and autism?
So the big message from President Trump and his top healthcare aides was that pregnant women should not take Tylenol. There have been numerous studies linking, not necessarily proving a cause, that if a woman takes Tylenol during pregnancy, their child might later be diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder or with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. There is not a clear, settled science in this area. So they're really moving, much more quickly than science has. But the warning is, don't do this. And RFK Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary, acknowledged that there are other pain medicines and fever reducers that have already been established as problems during pregnancy. So what they're trying to do is say, avoid it at all costs, take as little as possible. And I just want to be very clear, this is causing very mixed reactions among, whether you're an everyday person or in the scientific or medical community.
How are the makers of Tylenol responding to this?
They put out a statement. The company's name is Kenvue. It used to be part of Johnson & Johnson. Basically saying that our drug is safe, it's the safest thing during pregnancy, and saying that they strongly disagree with the administration.
There was also a potential treatment for autism announced as part of this briefing. What did we learn here and I guess this drug that I had not heard of before yesterday?
So the drug is called leucovorin. It tends to be used in chemotherapy patients. And what is happening is Dr. Oz, who is the head of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, he's announcing that Medicaid, which covers around half of American children, is going to start being willing to cover it. And what that means, essentially, in a nutshell, when a government entity decides to start covering a treatment, it usually means that the private health insurance companies will follow. They are usually trying to influence the market. So what Dr. Oz was saying is it's going to be easier for parents to take their child to a doctor to get this treatment. The doctor will still have to prescribe it. The doctor still has to do an exam and so on and understand the medical history. But they think that private health insurance companies will end up following, and those children who use Medicaid will benefit from a new policy. One other big thing is they're saying that the FDA is going to put a new label on acetaminophen, not just Tylenol. Just to be clear, if you get a generic brand, I know I personally always buy generic, it's much cheaper, but they want to put a new label on it, warning about potential effects if pregnant women take it.
All right, good to know. I know there were other comments from the president centered on vaccines. He was flanked at the podium by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, of course, has been vocal, to say the least, on vaccine issues. What did we hear from the president or his team on some of these points?
So a lot of stuff linking vaccines to autism, and we just have to be very clear, there is no proof linking vaccines to autism. That myth goes back to a 1998 study that has been retracted. It has been called a complete fraud. There have been a lot of different colorful ways that has been retracted. That study was not only debunked, it was specifically linked to the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. But nonetheless, that myth has really permeated our society. President Trump shared a lot of things. He suggested, for example, that people get the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine separately. I'm not clear if they're offered separately. He talked about spacing out vaccines. These are choices that some parents choose to make, but these are choices that they're controversial. It really depends on who you talk to.
All right. Erin Mansfield covers government accountability for USA Today. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Jimmy Kimmel is returning to late night, less than a week after the Walt Disney Company announced it had pulled his show off the air due to controversial comments about the death of Charlie Kirk. They said in a statement to USA Today yesterday that they've spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. The suspension of Kimmel's late-night show sparked widespread outrage from others in the entertainment world, including his late-night peers and other comedians, and free speech advocates expressed mounting concerns, while some critics of Kimmel, including President Trump, who is often lampooned on the show, had celebrated his removal from the airwaves. Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, had seemingly threatened ABC, Disney, and Kimmel over the late-night host's monologue about Kirk during a YouTube episode of commentator Benny Johnson's show last week. Carr said, "This is a very, very serious issue right now for Disney. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." You can read more about Kimmel's return with a link in today's show notes. The White House is denying the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, accepted $50,000 in cash bribes. That was alleged in a Justice Department investigation that was shut down after President Trump took office. Homan was recorded by the FBI last September, accepting a bag with $50,000 in it as part of an undercover FBI operation, according to multiple news reports. The New York Times, citing people familiar with the case, reported Homan was recorded on FBI audio tape, appearing to accept the money in exchange for agreeing to secure future government contracts related to border security for the agents, who were posing as businessmen. Though Homan's encounter with the FBI agents led to him being investigated for bribery and other crimes, the Times reported prosecutors closed the case after doubting there was enough evidence to prove to a jury that Homan agreed to specific actions in exchange for the payment. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt slammed the investigation into Homan, calling it another example of the weaponization of the Biden Department of Justice. TikTok has reached a preliminary deal to sell its U.S. operations to an American-based investor group. The move would allow the video platform to continue working in the country. I spoke with USA Today White House correspondent Joey Garrison for more. Joey, thanks for hopping on, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So just starting with this, Joey, what do we know about this preliminary deal and the various players involved here?
President Trump, for months now, has been trying to find a U.S. buyer of TikTok's American operations. And finally, the White House is at a point where they've announced a preliminary deal where essentially what TikTok operates in the United States will spin off to a consortium of American owners. The White House is not releasing the names of the ownership group, but as he often does, Trump himself discussed some of these people. They include Larry Ellison, the co-founder of Oracle, Michael Dell, of course, at Dell Computers, as well as Rupert Murdoch and his son Lachlan Murdoch. Trump identified them as some of the members who would be part of the ownership group. Oracle, the tech firm, would be brought on as the security provider for the American operation. So they would essentially be the company that's operating this outfit, TikTok, in the United States. And so that's what we know from now. This all came together. Of course, Trump met with Chinese President Xi over the phone. Xi gave kind of a final sign off of the deal from China's point. That's brought it to this point where we are right now.
Well, I want to go back to that call just for a moment. I mean, do we know anything about, I guess, any of the specifics that happened between the two in that conversation? And what might this new deal mean for broader, I guess, U.S.-China relations in the Trump era?
The reason we got to this point where the U.S. has been searching for an American buyer of the company is because of these security concerns with China and this data that TikTok collects from the more than 170 million American users of it. And so the algorithm of TikTok really comes into play and has been kind of the biggest source of contention in terms of getting a deal finalized. And so under this agreement, TikTok's algorithm would move under the control of the new U.S. business venture. The White House said Americans' TikTok data will be stored securely on servers operated by Oracle in the U.S. and that China won't have access to these servers. So the White House is saying that this should make American users of TikTok confident that their data is not getting to nefarious hands and that it'll be protected. You know, as for the overall relationship between the U.S. and China, I do think it shows that Trump, and what he would say is that he can make inroads even with people who are seen as our adversaries here. And the White House is trying to use this as an example of something that Trump was able to get done that Joe Biden didn't even consider. Of course, Biden signed into law the bill last year that effectively banned TikTok unless the U.S. was able to find a different operator, different owner. The White House is making this case that Trump worked proactively to find a solution, and he has. Now, of course, what will remain to be seen is whether, as this deal actually finalizes, the closing of the deal might not be until early 2026. Does it actually satisfy the concerns that a lot of experts out there have raised in terms of people's data and the information stored by TikTok? I think that remains to be seen here.
Well, Joe, what does all this mean for TikTok users and content creators? Can they expect any changes going forward?
Well, the way the White House is billing it is that they shouldn't really see any changes. I mean, they should be able to use the platform in the way that they always have. And they're saying they won't even have to download a new device on their phone. It should be pretty seamless. Now, again, we'll see whether that's the case. Also, they say the users in the United States will still be able to see the videos of TikTok users elsewhere in other countries. So it shouldn't affect the interplay from country to country. So from the user side of this, if this goes in accordance to how the White House is laid out here, I mean, it should be a win for the users. But again, all that depends on how this in the coming weeks here plays out before this transaction is finalized here.
All right. Joey Garrison covers the White House for USA Today. Thanks, Joey.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And as always, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.